My husband ignored my calls all day. He came home close to midnight smiling like nothing happened. Then he said he slept with his female boss and didn't regret it. I said nothing, just finished my dinner quietly. The next morning when he woke up expecting breakfast and coffee, he got something else that ended everything. Your husband's phone is probably dead, I told myself after the 5th ignored call. He's in meetings, I reasoned after the 10th. There's traffic, I whispered after the 15th. By the 17th call at 11:45 p.m., I'd run out of excuses and had started planning his funeral. Not literally, just the death of who I thought he was. When Blake finally came home, reeking of expensive perfume and cheap decisions, he didn't apologize for the ignored calls. Instead, he smiled like a man about to share good news and told me about Clara, his boss, and how he'd spent the day exploring her office, her car, and her hotel room with enthusiasm. If you believe no one should have to tolerate 17 ignored calls from their spouse, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us share these important stories. Now let's continue. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to that morning when I still believed in 17 years of marriage. 6 a.m. My alarm went off, same as always. Blake didn't stir. He never did, not until his own alarm at 6:30. I slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, starting the Colombian coffee he loved. 2 sugars, never cream. The smell filled our house like it had every morning since we'd moved in 12 years ago. By 6:45 I had his breakfast ready. 3 scrambled eggs with sharp cheddar. He hated mild cheese, said it was pointless. Whole wheat toast with real butter spread just right. Not too much, not too little. The kind of precision you only achieve after years of practice, of caring about someone's smallest preferences. Morning, beautiful, Blake mumbled when he finally made it downstairs, his hair still sticking up on one side. He kissed my cheek while reaching for his coffee, a choreographed move we'd perfected without trying. Don't forget it's Tuesday, I reminded him, pointing to the calendar on the fridge. First Tuesday of the month. Date night. Our tradition for the past decade. Wouldn't miss it, he said, but he was already scrolling through his phone. Claire's got me in meetings all day, but I'll be home by 7. Clara Whitmore. 3 months she'd been his boss, and already her name came up more than mine at our dinner table. She was brilliant, he said. Innovative. Pushing the team to new heights. I'd met her once at the company picnic. Designer heels in grass, typing on her phone while others played volleyball, complimenting my potato salad with a smile that never reached her eyes. She's intense, Blake had said that first week. But I'm learning so much. The late nights started gradually. First just Thursdays for team building. Then Tuesdays for strategic planning. By month 2, any night could be a Clara night. He'd come home at 10-11, sometimes midnight, smelling wrong. New air fresheners at the office, he explained when I'd mentioned the cologne change. Clara had them installed. Some productivity study she read. We'd worn the same scents for 17 years. Him, woody aftershave I bought every Christmas. Me, vanilla body spray from Target. Suddenly he smelled like something from a department store I'd never shop in. Then came the phone password. I'd reached for it one night to set our alarm, something I'd done hundreds of times. What's your passcode? Oh, just use yours, he'd said, taking it from me. Company policy. Clara's implementing new security protocols. I should have known then. But 17 years of trust makes you stupid. After Blake left that morning, I went through my own routine. Shower, sensible librarian clothes, yogurt with granola. I managed our local branch, 15 employees, thousands of books, endless community programs. Not glamorous like Clara's corporate world, but fulfilling. My phone buzzed at lunch. Victoria, my sister. Coffee tomorrow? I'm near your library at 2. I'd agreed, not knowing she'd spend that coffee lecturing me about Blake. Victoria was a partner at Brennan & Associates, saw divorces all day, probably couldn't help seeing problems everywhere. But when we'd met the previous week, she'd been more direct than usual. He missed your birthday dinner, Kennedy. Big presentation. At the Ember Hotel bar? Because I saw his car there during my client meeting. Maybe he was meeting clients. She'd grabbed my hand across the table. Check your joint accounts. Just check them. I hadn't. Because checking meant doubting, and doubting meant admitting something I wasn't ready to face. That Tuesday, the last normal Tuesday, I'd left work early. 3 stops for ingredients. Blake's mother's lasagna recipe required specific ricotta, exact meat ratios, perfect seasoning. I'd spent 2 hours layering it just right, getting the edges crispy how he liked. The wedding china came out, ivory with silver edges, plates we'd registered for when forever felt guaranteed. Beeswax candles, not the cheap grocery store ones. The green dress from our anniversary, the one Blake said made my eyes look like emeralds. At noon I texted, "Don't forget, our night." His response, a thumbs up. For our decade-old tradition. I told myself he was busy, Clara probably had him swamped. 7 p.m. came and went. The lasagna was perfect. 7:30. Running late. I texted. 8 o'clock. No response. Lasagna back in the oven. 8:30. I opened wine then poured it back. The candles kept burning. 9 o'clock. Another text. Everything okay? By 10 o'clock I'd blown out the candles and accepted what I'd been denying for months. The kitchen smelled like wasted effort and dying traditions. The empty chair across from me might as well have had Clara's name on it. That's when the real calling started. Not casual check-ins but insistent, worried calls. The kind a wife makes when her husband could be in an accident. Or in someone else. Each unanswered ring felt like a small betrayal. By call 17 I wasn't worried anymore. I was planning. Not revenge, not yet. Just restructuring my understanding of the last 17 years. The expensive perfume hit me before Blake even fully entered the house. Not his cologne, not mine. Something floral and aggressive, the kind worn by women who take what they want. Long day at the office? I asked, my voice steadier than my hands. He grabbed a beer, didn't even look at the cold lasagna on the counter. You could say that. Then came the words that shattered everything while I sat there, fork in hand, his mother's lasagna growing colder on the wedding china we'd picked out when we thought we knew what marriage meant. The fork clattered against the plate as I set it down. Blake was still talking, still describing his day with Clara like he was recounting a vacation. My phone sat between us on the counter, screen dark, holding the evidence of 17 attempts to reach him. 17 times I'd needed to hear his voice. But I had to understand how we got here first. At 6:15 p.m. I'd made the first call. Traffic on Tuesday was always heavy downtown. Blake complained about it constantly. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. His recorded voice, cheerful and professional. "You've reached Blake Carver. Leave a message." I didn't leave one. He'd see the missed call, figure I was checking in about dinner. The lasagna had just gone into the oven for its final browning, filling the house with the smell of home. 6:30 came without a return call. Unusual but not alarming. Clara probably had him trapped in one of her famous quick sync meetings that lasted hours. At 7 o'clock, when his empty chair stared back at me across the candlelit table, I called again. This time it rang only twice before being sent to voicemail. Declined. My chest tightened slightly. Blake never declined my calls. Even in meetings he'd let it ring out naturally. 7:30 third call. My voice was light when his voicemail picked up. "Hey, just checking if you're okay. Dinner's ready when you are." By 8 o'clock the concern was real. For calls now, each one building a knot in my stomach. I walked to the living room window, peering out at our empty driveway. The Hendersons across the street were having dinner, their dining room window glowing warm. Normal people having a normal Tuesday. The 5th call at 8:15 made me feel foolish. Was I becoming one of those wives? The ones who couldn't give their husbands space? But we had plans. Sacred plans. First Tuesday plans that had survived job changes, family deaths. Even that year Blake had pneumonia. 8:45. Calls 6 and 7 happened back to back. My fingers were starting to shake as I dialed. Not from anger yet, just confusion mixed with the first bitter taste of fear. Car accidents happened. Heart attacks happened to men Blake's age. All sorts of terrible things happened while wives waited with cooling dinners. By 9 o'clock I was scrolling through our text messages, looking for clues I'd missed. The pattern jumped out immediately. In meetings, 12 times in the past month. Clara needs this project finished, 8 times. Don't wait up, 6 times, including last Tuesday when he'd promised to help my mother move her heavy dresser. Sorry Ken, he texted at 9:30 that night. Clara called an emergency strategy session. Tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. Mom hired movers instead, too polite to complain but disappointed in a way that made me defensive of a husband who didn't deserve it. Call number 10 at 9:45. My hands were definitely shaking now. The lasagna had long since been removed from the oven, sitting on the stovetop like an accusation. I found myself bargaining with the universe. Let him be okay and I'll never complain about Claire again. Let him answer and I'll forget about the cologne, the passwords, the late nights. The phone stayed silent. At 10:15, between calls 11 and 12, I opened our laptop. Blake's email was still logged in. He never remembered to sign out. The subject lines from Clara filled his inbox. Need you on this, can you stay late? Quick drink to celebrate? Quick drink. Plural activities disguised as singular professional needs. 10:30 brought an unexpected interruption. My phone rang, not Blake but Mrs. Patterson from next door. Relief and disappointment crashed together. Kennedy dear, is everything all right? Her voice carried that particular concern of nosy neighbors who actually care. I noticed Blake's car hasn't been in the driveway much lately. He's been working late. The lie came automatically. Oh, that explains it. Though I did see him last week at 2 a.m. coming home. Scared me half to death. I thought someone was breaking in. Poor thing, returning from the hospital at that hour. My blood chilled. The hospital? Well, I assumed. Where else would someone go at that hour? Is your mother okay? My mother was perfectly fine. I'd had lunch with her 3 days ago. She's good. Thanks for checking, Mrs. Patterson. Call 13 at 10:45. 14 at 11 o'clock. Each ring echoed in the quiet kitchen. The candles had burned down to stumps, wax pooling on the good tablecloth. I was pacing now, a path from sink to table to refrigerator and back. My wedding ring caught the light with each pass, sending little rainbows across the wall. 17 years since Blake had slipped it on my finger, promising to answer whenever I called. 11:15, call 15. I left a message this time, my voice carefully controlled. Blake, I'm worried. Please just let me know you're safe. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification that wasn't from Blake. American Express. New charge of $400 at Ember Hotel Restaurant, 8:47 p.m. My hands stopped shaking. Everything stopped shaking. The world went very still and very clear. I opened the app with steady fingers. There it was, itemized like evidence. Ember Hotel Restaurant. Table for two. Champagne, not the house brand but Veuve Clicquot. 2 entrees, filet mignon and salmon. Dessert, chocolate soufflé for two. For two. While I'd been warming and rewarming a lasagna made from his mother's recipe, Blake was having champagne and soufflé. The same restaurant where Victoria had seen his car. The place he was supposedly never going to be. Call 16 at 11:30. I didn't expect an answer anymore. The sound of his voicemail had become familiar as a funeral hymn. But I called anyway, needing to complete the ritual, needing to give him every chance to not be who I now knew he was. 11:45, call 17. The last one. I sat at the kitchen table, the cold lasagna my only company, and dialed one final time. As it rang, I looked at my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back wasn't the worried wife anymore. She was someone else, someone who had spent 6 hours transforming from concerned to suspicious to certain. When Blake's voicemail picked up for the 17th time, I didn't leave a message. I just sat there, phone silent in my hand, wedding ring feeling heavier than it had in years. The kitchen clock ticked toward midnight, each second bringing Blake closer to home, closer to whatever excuse he'd prepared. But I already knew the truth. The 17 calls weren't ignored because he couldn't answer. They were ignored because Clara Whitmore was more important than 17 years of First Tuesdays. The champagne toast at 8:47 p.m. was his real priority. The soufflé for two was his actual date night. I straightened the wedding china, dumped the cold lasagna in the trash and waited. Not like a worried wife anymore but like a woman preparing for war. The kitchen clock showed 11:58 when I heard Blake's key in the lock. I stayed seated, my hands flat on the table, breathing steady. The door opened to whistling, actually whistling, My Way by Sinatra. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so cruel. Blake walked in like he'd just closed $1 million deal. His tie hung loose, shirt untucked on one side, that particular dishevelment that comes from hasty redressing. But it was his smile that stopped me cold. Not guilty, not apologetic, but satisfied. The smile of a man who'd gotten exactly what he wanted. He went straight to the refrigerator without even glancing my way. The beer bottle hissed open. He took a long pull, then finally noticed me sitting there in the dim light. Still up. He leaned against the counter, casual as Sunday morning. Thought you'd be in bed by now. It's Tuesday. My voice came out steadier than I felt. First Tuesday. Oh. Not even a flinch of recognition. Right. Sorry about that. Got caught up. Caught up. Like our decade-old tradition was a dentist appointment he'd forgotten to cancel. Long day at the office? I asked, the words careful and measured. You could say that. He took another sip of beer, then set it down with the kind of deliberation that meant something big was coming. Actually, Kennedy, since you're up, we should talk. My spine straightened. Okay. Blake rolled his shoulders back and his whole demeanor shifted. Not to shame or guilt, but to something else entirely. Pride maybe. Or relief. I slept with Clara today. The words landed between us like dropped glass. Sharp, dangerous, impossible to take back. I waited for more. An explanation. An apology. Something. Instead, Blake continued like he was giving a presentation. Multiple times, actually. In her office after everyone left. Then in her car in the parking garage. Then at the Ember Hotel. He paused, meeting my eyes directly. And Kennedy, I don't regret a single second of it. My hand found the fork beside my plate. The cold lasagna was still there, congealed and pathetic. I took a bite, chewed slowly, tasted nothing but made myself swallow. That's it. Blake's voice pitched higher. That's your reaction? I took another bite. The lasagna needs more oregano. His face twisted in confusion. I just told you I heard you. Another bite. The mechanical motion of eating kept my hands busy, kept me from throwing the plate at his head. You had relations with your boss in 3 different locations. Very thorough. Kennedy, what would you like me to say? I set down the fork carefully, dabbed my mouth with a napkin. Congratulations on your successful networking? Should I update your LinkedIn? Blake Carver. Now offering intimate consultations with management? The beer bottle slammed down. I just told you I cheated on you and you're making jokes? No, I said, taking one more bite. You told me you destroyed our marriage for a woman who signs your paychecks. I'm eating dinner. There's a difference. Blake's carefully prepared speech was crumbling. This wasn't the script he'd rehearsed. He'd expected tears, shouting, maybe thrown dishes. Something dramatic he could work with, apologize through, maybe even spin into being partially my fault. But calm wasn't in his playbook. You're in shock, he decided, moving closer. Kennedy, we need to process this. We. I laughed, but it came out sharp. There is no we anymore. He just made that very clear. 3 times clear, apparently. His face flushed. This attitude isn't helping anything. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try again. I stood, cleared my throat dramatically. Oh, Blake, how could you? Our 17 years meant nothing? Please, tell me more about how Clara's office desk compares to our marriage bed. I'm dying to know the details. Stop it. No, really. Did she compliment your performance review? Give you 5 stars. Employee of the month. You're being childish. And you're being escorted out of my kitchen. I picked up his beer, poured it down the sink. Go upstairs, Blake. Pack a bag. Find a hotel. Maybe the Ember has a loyalty program now. His jaw clenched. This is my house too. Your name might be on the deed, but you just forfeited your welcome. Unless you'd like me to call Victoria right now and start proceedings immediately. Blake stared at me like I'd grown another head. This wasn't his Kennedy. His Kennedy would have cried, begged for explanations, asked what she'd done wrong. His Kennedy would have made this easy for him. I'm not leaving, he said, but his voice wavered. We need to talk about this. Like adults. Adults don't come home at midnight bragging about their affairs. Adults don't destroy 17 years for afternoon hookups. Adults don't. I stopped, took a breath. You know what? You're right. The guest room has clean sheets. Blake grabbed his beer bottle, realized it was empty, set it down again. Kennedy, No. I held up my hand. You had your confession. You got to unburden yourself, transfer your guilt to my shoulders. But I'm not carrying it. Whatever you thought would happen next, whatever reaction you wanted, you're not getting it. He stood there for another moment, looking lost. This was supposed to be his moment of brutal honesty, his chance to be the bad guy who at least had the courage to confess. Instead he just looked small and stupid, holding an empty beer bottle while his marriage dissolved in real time. Finally he turned toward the stairs, his footsteps heavy with confusion rather than remorse. He paused at the doorway. "We'll talk in the morning. When you've had time to process." "Sure," I said, already pulling out my laptop. Sweet dreams. The moment his footsteps faded upstairs, I opened a new spreadsheet. My fingers flew across the keyboard with the efficiency of 17 years of shared passwords and joint everything. The document title typed itself: Project Silent Storm. First column, assets. Checking account, savings, investment portfolio, both cars, the house with its conveniently forgotten detail. The mortgage in my name only thanks to Blake's credit disaster in year 5. Second column, liabilities. Blake's credit card debt, his student loans, his ego, though that last one wasn't technically financial. Third column, action items. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "How was date night?" I typed back, "Memorable." Then I opened another message to Victoria. "Need the shark. Not the lawyer. The shark." 3 dots appeared immediately. That bad? Worse. But I'm about to make it beautiful. My office. 7 a.m. Bring coffee and war paint. I smiled. My first real smile in hours. Then I returned to my spreadsheet, adding tabs for documentation, timeline, and my personal favorite, revenge served at optimal temperature. Blake thought his confession would break me. He thought those 3 locations of infidelity would send me spiraling. But all he'd done was flip a switch I didn't know existed. The one that transformed 17 years of devotion into cold, calculated precision. I worked until 3 a.m., the kitchen quiet except for keyboard clicks and the occasional sound of Blake's snoring drifting down from our bedroom. Sorry, his temporary sleeping quarters. Every password memorized, every account documented, every vulnerability cataloged. By the time I finally closed the laptop, Project Silent Storm was 18 pages of pure, organized retribution. Blake had given me 17 hours until morning to process his betrayal. I only needed 6 to plan his complete destruction. The laptop screen glowed 3 a.m. when I finally pushed back from the kitchen table. 6 hours of planning complete. My eyes burned, but my mind was crystal clear. Blake's snoring still drifted down from upstairs. The peaceful sleep of a man who thought confession meant absolution. I started with the money. Our joint savings account showed $47,832. Legally, I could move it. Morally, after his midnight performance, I should have taken it all. I initiated the transfer to my personal account, the one Blake didn't even know existed. Opened 3 months ago when the cologne changed, just in case. Transfer complete. 3:17 a.m. Next came the credit cards. Blake had 3 supplementary cards on my accounts. I canceled them one by one, effective immediately. The customer service representative, probably used to middle-of-the-night revenge cancellations, didn't even question it. "Would you like to remove the authorized user as well?" "Absolutely. Changes will take effect within 2 hours." By 3:45 I was downloading our entire text history from the cloud. 3 years of messages, including last month's gems where Blake called Clara incompetent, Daddy's promotion pet, and my personal favorite, "She makes me miss my old boss who only spoke in sports metaphors." I screenshot everything, organized by date, highlighted the best parts. Blake's own words would be his jury. At 4:30 I started making appointments. 3 different divorce attorneys, all before noon. Victoria would be first at 7 o'clock, but I wanted options. Comparison shopping for divorce lawyers felt like choosing cereal. Except this decision would determine my next 17 years. By 5 o'clock I stood in my kitchen, exhaustion trying to claim me, but I had one more performance to prepare. Blake would wake at 7:30 expecting his usual breakfast. Colombian coffee, 2 sugars. 3 eggs scrambled with sharp cheddar. Whole wheat toast lightly buttered. He'd get the breakfast. Just not the way he expected. I started cooking at 5:30, making everything perfect. Better than perfect. Restaurant-quality eggs, fresh squeezed orange juice, bacon crispy enough to shatter. The kitchen smelled like the best mornings of our marriage when we still liked each other. At 6:15 I sent a text to Marcus Caldwell, my trainer from the gym. Marcus was 6'3", built like a swimmer with the kind of jawline that made married women remember being single. More importantly, he had a wicked sense of humor and owed me a favor after I'd helped him study for his nutrition certification. Want to earn $200 for eating breakfast and looking gorgeous? His response came at 6:20. This sounds like the beginning of either a crime or the best story ever. Just breakfast. And maybe some light psychological warfare. Make it bacon and I'm there by 7:15. At 7 o'clock, while Blake continued sleeping, I changed into my best casual dress. The one that made me look effortlessly put together. Hair done, subtle makeup, the works. If I was serving revenge, I'd look good doing it. Marcus arrived at 7:20, and I'd never been happier to see someone. He walked in wearing jeans and a fitted Henley that did wonderful things for his shoulders. Kennedy, you look like you're about to commit a beautiful crime. Just serving breakfast. I handed him coffee. My husband will be down soon. He had a long night informing me about his extracurricular activities with his boss. Marcus's eyebrows rose. And you want me to? Eat his breakfast. Be charming. Exist in his space. I can do that. He grinned. This is already worth more than $200. At 7:31, I heard Blake's alarm. His footsteps upstairs, shower running, the familiar sounds of a man who didn't know his world had already ended. 7:45, Blake's footsteps on the stairs. He walked in wearing his usual Tuesday outfit, already checking his phone. Smells amazing, babe, he said without looking up. Oh, it is amazing. I poured orange juice into a glass. Marcus thinks so too. Blake's head snapped up. Marcus sat at the kitchen table in Blake's chair, already halfway through Blake's eggs. Kennedy, Marcus said cheerfully, these eggs are incredible. You're absolutely too good for him. Blake's mouth opened, closed, opened again. What? Who is this? Blake, meet Marcus. Marcus, this is Blake, my soon-to-be ex-husband who spent yesterday exploring his boss's office space. Marcus whistled low. The one who ignored 17 calls. That's not classy, man. Blake's face went through a spectacular color journey. White to pink to red to purple. What the hell is this? This. I set hash browns on Marcus's plate. This is consequences with a side of breakfast potatoes. You can't just. Blake stepped toward the table. Marcus stood up. All 6 feet 3 inches of him. I think she can. Blake backed up, his phone buzzing insistently. He ignored it. Kennedy, this is insane. You're being. What? Vindictive. I refilled Marcus's coffee cup. No, vindictive would be calling Clara's husband. Richard Whitmore, right? The cardiac surgeon who thinks his wife is at a medical conference. Blake went pale. You wouldn't. I pulled out my phone, showed him Richard's contact information already loaded. I've got screenshots, Blake. Tuesday at 2:47 p.m., you called Clara insatiable. The same Tuesday you told me you were in budget meetings. Marcus took another bite of eggs, watching like this was premium entertainment. Tuesday afternoon? Bold move. Stupid but bold. Blake's phone rang. Clara's name on the screen. He declined it. You should probably answer that, I said sweetly. She's been calling since 7 o'clock. Something about her husband finding hotel receipts. Blake fumbled for his wallet, pulled out his credit card. I need to. That card was cancelled at 3:17 this morning. The blue one was cancelled at 3:22. The emergency visa at 3:26. You'll have to use your personal account. I smiled. The one with $73 in it. The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Victoria walked in like she owned the place, power suit immaculate, briefcase in hand. Morning, Kennedy. Blake. She said his name like it left a bad taste. What's she doing here? Blake's voice cracked. Victoria set her briefcase on the counter, pulled out a folder. My job. Here's your separation agreement. You have 48 hours to respond. I suggest getting a lawyer. This is ambush. No, Victoria said calmly, this is consequence. Also Claire Whitmore? She's named in the complaint. Turns out her company has a strict non-fraternization policy. HR will be interested. Blake's phone rang again. Clara. This time he answered, stepping toward the hallway. We could all hear her panicked voice. Richard knows. He has the credit card statements, the hotel receipts. My father's calling, the company's calling. Blake, what did you do? He looked back at us. Me calm Victoria professional Marcus still enjoying his breakfast, and I saw it finally hit him. This wasn't a dramatic fight he could win. This wasn't tears he could manipulate. This was calculated, organized, and already in motion. Blake rushed outside with Clara still screaming through his phone. Through the window I watched him pace our driveway, one hand pressed to his forehead, the other gripping the phone like it might save him. Victoria, Marcus, and I stood in my kitchen silent spectators to the beginning of his collapse. "I need to go," Blake said into the phone loud enough for us to hear. "I'll call you back." He stormed back inside, his face blotchy and desperate. "Kennedy, we need to talk. Alone." "No." I picked up my coffee cup, took a measured sip. "Marcus hasn't finished his breakfast, and Victoria has more papers for you to review." Blake pulled out his phone again, fingers fumbling as he tried calling Clara back. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. "Having trouble?" Victoria asked innocently. He ignored her, switching to his banking app. I watched his face pale as he saw the joint account balance. $12.47. Just enough to keep it open, not enough to matter. "The ATM," he muttered, grabbing his keys. "I'll just..." "Save yourself the trip," I called after him. "All 3 cards were cancelled hours ago." He spun around. "You can't do this. That's joint money." "Was," Victoria corrected. Past tense. "All perfectly legal, by the way." Blake's phone buzzed with texts. His eyes widened as he read, his thumbs flying across the screen. More texts came through, rapid fire. His face went from pale to gray. "Problems?" Marcus asked, helping himself to more bacon. Blake didn't answer. He was too busy calling someone. "Mom." His voice cracked like a teenager's. "Mom, I need to explain." Even from across the room I could hear his mother's voice, sharp and disappointed. "Kennedy already called me this morning, Blake Andrew Carver." "How could you? That sweet girl who makes my lasagna recipe better than I do? Who remembers my birthday when you forget?" "Mom, please. Don't you mom please me. 17 years, Blake. 17 years she put up with you, and this is how you repay her? With that woman." He hung up on his own mother. Marcus stood stretched. "Well, this has been enlightening. Kennedy, those eggs really were incredible." He pulled out his wallet, but I waved him off. "Keep it. You earned it just by being here." After Marcus left, Blake slumped against the counter. His phone kept buzzing. Texts from coworkers, friends, people who'd already heard. The modern wildfire of gossip, spreading faster than California drought season. "I have a book club meeting," I announced, checking the time. "Victoria, can you handle things here?" "By pleasure." Blake looked between us. "Book club? No. Kennedy, our life is falling apart." "Your life," I corrected, grabbing my purse. "Mine is just getting interesting." 20 minutes later, I sat in Martha's living room surrounded by 6 women who'd known me since before Blake, during Blake, and now, blessedly, would know me after Blake. The book lay forgotten on the coffee table. "Honey," Martha said, pouring wine despite it being 10 a.m., "tell us everything." So I did. Calmly, factually, even with a touch of humor. The 17 calls, the midnight confession, the breakfast ambush. They gasped at the right moments, anger burning in their eyes like protective mothers. Janet, who worked in Blake's company HR department, nearly choked on her wine. "Clara Whitmore? Oh, honey, no. We've had 3 complaints about her already. Inappropriate conduct with subordinates, creating hostile work environment, using company resources for personal activities." "Personal activities?" I asked. "Let's just say the security cameras in the parking garage have been very educational. Your Blake isn't her first office romance. He's just the first one stupid enough to confess to his wife." My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Mrs. Carver? This is Richard Whitmore." The room went silent. I put him on speaker. "Dr. Whitmore," I said carefully. "Please call me Richard. I wanted to thank you for the anonymous tip about checking credit card statements. Very illuminating. I don't know what you..." "It's fine," he interrupted, his voice surprisingly warm. "I'm not angry with you. You're as much a victim here as I am. More actually. This is Claire's 4th affair that I know of. But this time she chose the wrong couple to destroy." The women around me leaned in closer. "I've already contacted Blake's company," Richard continued. Sent them some interesting documentation about Clara's patterns. Did you know she specifically targets married men? It's like a game to her. My stomach turned. I didn't know that. I've also spoken with my lawyer. He's very interested in collaborating with yours. Clara doesn't know it yet, but she's about to lose everything. Her father got her that job, you know. He's on the board. Was on the board. He resigned this morning when I sent him the evidence. Oh. I'm sorry this happened to you, Kennedy. Blake's an idiot, but Clara, she's a predator. She'll destroy him now that the fun is over. That's what she does, conquers then discards. After Richard hung up, the room exploded in conversation. Everyone had opinions, advice, wine to pour. But Janet's words stuck. You better get home and secure anything valuable. Desperate men do stupid things. I drove home to find Blake's car gone and the front door wide open. Inside chaos. He'd clearly tried to pack in a hurry. Drawers pulled out, closets ransacked, papers everywhere. But the office door remained locked. I'd changed that lock at 4 a.m. The gaming room he loved was now my craft room, his precious gaming chair replaced with my grandmother's sewing table I'd retrieved from storage. His golf clubs were gone because they'd been donated to charity yesterday. The receipt was indeed on the counter, ready for his tax deduction. I went to our bedroom. His clothes were thrown everywhere, suitcases half-packed then abandoned. On the bed was a note. Where are my baseball cards? I texted Victoria. He's looking for the signed collection. Her response was immediate. Safe in my office. Legal leverage. Blake's entire world was unraveling in real time. His credit was frozen, his mother had disowned him, his co-workers were choosing sides, and Clara, the woman he'd destroyed everything for, wouldn't even answer his calls. I sat on my bed, our bed, and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not enough to stop what I'd started, but enough to recognize that Blake had played himself. He'd gambled 17 years on a woman who collected married men like trophies. My phone buzzed. Blake, where are you? We need to talk. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I set my phone down on the bed and walked to the window. Blake's car wasn't in the driveway, but I knew where he'd gone. Sunday was inventory day at his office. Skeleton crew, perfect for trying to sneak in and grab his things before Monday's storm hit. He had no idea the storm had already made landfall. My phone rang. Janet from book club from HR. Kennedy, you need to know what's happening tomorrow. Can you sit down? I was already sitting. Tell me. Blake's keycard was deactivated an hour ago. When he arrives Monday morning, security will be waiting. The CEO called an emergency meeting. Richard Whitmore sent them everything. Emails, timestamps, security footage from the parking garage. Security footage? Last Tuesday. Blake and Clara in her car. The camera angle was, unfortunately, clear. My stomach rolled. Of course there's video. That's not all. Clara's assistant Linda just sent a mass email to the entire company. Subject line. Why I'm resigning effective immediately. She listed every affair Clara's had with subordinates. Blake's number 4. I stood up, pacing now. 4. In 2 years. The other 3 were transferred to different departments after things ended. But Blake. He's the first one married. The first one whose wife called Richard Whitmore. Monday came faster than expected. I woke at 5 a.m. to texts from numbers I didn't recognize, Blake's co-workers, people I'd met at company parties, all reaching out with variations of, I'm so sorry, and we had no idea. At 7:45 my phone rang. Blake. They won't let me in the building, he said, voice high and panicked. My keycard doesn't work. Security says I need to go to HR immediately. Okay. Okay? That's all you have to say? Kennedy, they're treating me like a criminal. No, Blake. They're treating you like an employee who violated company policy. There's a difference. He hung up. 15 minutes later, another call. This time his voice was hollow. They had everything printed. Emails, texts, even, there was video. From the parking garage. I said nothing. 3 executives were waiting. They had the employee handbook highlighted. The sections about supervisor relationships, misuse of company property, creating hostile work environment. My desk is already packed. I see. Claire's gone too. Her office is empty. They said her father came in at 6 a.m., cleaned it out himself. He's resigning from the board. The father who'd gotten her the job, who'd pulled strings, who'd enabled her behavior for years, finally facing consequences by association. Kennedy, I need you to understand, she pursued me. Blake, she pursued you like a cat pursues mice. For sport. You were number 4. Silence. Then, how did you know that? Linda sent an email. The whole company knows. I heard him make a sound, not quite a sob, not quite a laugh. Something broken. They want me to sign things. NDAs. Severance agreements. They're offering 2 weeks' pay if I sign immediately and don't pursue wrongful termination. Take it. But. Take it, Blake. 2 weeks is more than you deserve and we both know it. Another call came through. Unknown number. I have to go, I told Blake. The new caller was unexpected. James Morrison, the CEO of Blake's company. His voice was formal but somehow warm. Mrs. Carver, I'm calling personally to apologize. What our employees did, what happened under our watch, it's inexcusable. Thank you, but we're conducting a full investigation. Clara Whitmore has been terminated and we're reviewing our policies. Your husband, former husband? He's also being terminated with cause. I understand. We'd like to offer you consideration for your discretion in this matter. We value our reputation and Mr. Morrison, I don't want your money. I just want this to end. I respect that. But please, if you need anything, references for Blake despite everything or no. Thank you, but no. After hanging up, I decided something. I would go to Blake's office. Not for him but for me. For closure. I dressed carefully, my best professional dress, navy blue with subtle pinstripes. The one I wore to library board meetings. Hair smooth, makeup minimal but polished. I looked like a woman who had her life together, even if that life was currently being reorganized. The drive to Blake's office took 20 minutes. I'd made it dozens of times, dropping off forgotten lunches, picking him up when his car was serviced, attending holiday parties where Clara would hold court like a queen while other people's husbands orbited around her. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Her face went through several expressions: surprise, pity, respect. Mrs. Carver. How can I help you? I'm here to collect my husband's personal items. Is that possible? She made a quick call then nodded. Security will escort you. The security guard, Tom, was someone I'd chatted with at company picnics. His kids used my library's reading program. He walked beside me quietly until we reached the elevator. I'm sorry about all this, Mrs. Carver. You deserved better. Thank you, Tom. The elevator opened onto Blake's floor. It was like walking into a crime scene after the tape had been removed. People stood in clusters, whispering. When they saw me, the whispering stopped. I walked through the silence with my head high, greeting people I recognized with small nods. Some nodded back. Others looked away, embarrassed by association. Blake's desk was indeed boxed up. 2 cardboard boxes of 17 years reduced to office supplies and personal photos. I picked up the framed picture of our wedding, studied it for a moment, then placed it face down in the box. Kennedy. I turned. Linda stood there, Clara's former assistant, looking simultaneously defiant and exhausted. I'm sorry, she said. I should have warned you. I knew about the others but I needed this job and it's not your fault. I sent the email. About her patterns. The whole company knows now. Good. She blinked, surprised. Claire called me an hour ago. Screaming about loyalty, about ruining her life. I told her she ruined her own life, plus several marriages. Through the glass conference room I could see what used to be Claire's corner office. Empty now, like a luxury apartment after an eviction. The expensive furniture remained, but everything personal was gone. The awards, the photos with company executives, the designer accessories she'd used to mark her territory. Where's Blake? I asked Tom. Left an hour ago. Was in the bathroom for a while, then security had to ask him to leave. The bathroom. Hiding in the bathroom while his professional life imploded. It was almost too pathetic to be satisfying. Almost. I picked up Blake's boxes, lighter than 17 years should weigh, and walked back through the office. This time people watched openly. Some with sympathy, others with what looked like respect. At the elevator, James Morrison himself appeared. Mrs. Carver. I wanted to apologize in person. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes that seemed genuinely troubled. "It's not your fault," I said. "It happened on my watch. That makes it my responsibility." He paused. "Blake was a good employee before this. Claire was persuasive. She knew how to identify weaknesses. She found his easily enough. If you need anything." "I don't. But thank you." As the elevator doors closed, I saw the office already returning to its whispered conversations, the scandal becoming mythology in real time. By tomorrow the story would be legend. By next week company policy. I loaded Blake's boxes into my car and drove home in silence. The weight of what had just happened, the complete professional destruction of two people, should have felt heavier. Instead I felt oddly light, like I'd finally set down luggage I didn't realize I'd been carrying. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my driveway. Richard Whitmore. "Kennedy, I have an unconventional request. Clara's birthday is Thursday. She made reservations months ago at Marcello's, her favorite restaurant. Non-refundable, of course. I thought perhaps you'd join me for dinner? Call it a celebration of freedom." Marcello's. The place Blake could never afford but Clara treated like her personal dining room. That's 3 days away. Enough time for word to spread. Enough time for them to know we'll be there. I understood immediately. This wasn't about dinner. This was about being seen. "What time?" 8 o'clock. "And Kennedy?" "We're something memorable." Thursday arrived wrapped in drama. My phone had been buzzing all day with texts from people who'd heard about the Marcello's reservation. Small towns had nothing on corporate gossip networks. I chose a red dress. Not subtle, not safe, but absolutely unforgettable. The kind of dress that said I wasn't hiding, wasn't broken, wasn't ashamed. Blake had texted 6 times asking if the Marcello's rumor was true. I didn't respond. Richard was already waiting when I arrived, standing by the bar in an impeccable suit. He looked like what he was, successful, established, and completely unbothered by his imploding marriage. "You look stunning," he said, offering his arm. "Shall we give them a show?" The restaurant was packed, and I recognized at least a dozen faces from Blake's company. Phones appeared like weapons, subtle and not-so-subtle photos being taken. Good. Let them document this. The maitre d' led us to Clara's usual table. Center of the room, impossible to miss. Richard pulled out my chair with theatrical courtesy. "Before we order," he said, voice carrying, "a toast." He raised his water glass, waiting until the restaurant quieted just enough. "To wives who know their worth," he said clearly, "and to husbands who learn too late what they've lost." Someone actually applauded. Just one person, but it was enough. Richard smiled and clinked his glass against mine. "Now," he said quieter, "let me tell you what those two are actually doing right now." He pulled out his phone, showed me a text from his private investigator. Blake had moved into Clara's guest room after Richard kicked her out of their house. The photo showed Blake carrying a single suitcase into a shabby apartment complex. "She's living in a 1-bedroom in Riverside Gardens," Richard said. "Her father cut her off completely. Frozen her trust fund pending investigation of moral turpitude. That's actually the legal term." "Blake's living on her couch?" "Guest room is generous. It's a Murphy bed in what she uses as a home office. My investigator says they've been fighting constantly. Apparently, the thrill of sneaking around was the only thing keeping them interested." Our appetizers arrived, the same ones Clara always ordered. Richard had done his homework. "She called me yesterday," he continued, crying about her career being over. "I reminded her that she chose to sleep with subordinates. 4 of them. That Blake was just the latest in her collection." My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Are you at Marcello's with that handsome doctor? Mrs. Patterson just showed me a photo from Facebook." The modern speed of humiliation. Instagram stories, Facebook posts, text chains. Blake and Clara were probably watching their public shaming in real time from her Murphy bed. "How are you so calm about this?" I asked Richard. "Because I've been planning my exit for a year. Clara's affairs weren't a surprise. Blake was just the excuse I needed to finally file." He smiled. "Plus, I protected my assets long ago. She'll get the minimum required by law, nothing more." Our entrees arrived. Richard had ordered the house special for both of us, something Clara apparently bragged about discovering. "You know what the ironic part is?" Richard said, cutting into his fish. She thinks she's some kind of romantic rebel. In reality, she's just a cliché with daddy issues and a personality disorder. Harsh but probably accurate. Halfway through dinner my phone rang. Blake's mother. "I'm at dinner," I answered. "Can I call you back?" "Oh honey, I just wanted to say, that photo of you in the red dress at Marcello's? You look absolutely radiant. That doctor is very handsome." "Thank you, Patricia. Also, I sent flowers to your house. The card explains everything. Blake is no longer welcome at Sunday dinners." She hung up before I could respond. "Your mother-in-law?" Richard asked. "Former. And apparently I'm keeping her in the divorce." We both laughed, real laughter, not the bitter kind. My phone buzzed again. "Victoria, Blake just called asking about his 401k. I explained the early withdrawal penalties. He actually cried." I showed Richard the text. He raised his glass again. "To financial justice." As we were leaving, Richard paused at the door. "Oh, I forgot to mention. Claire's apartment? Her car was repossessed this morning. Apparently, Blake's been trying to use her credit cards for groceries. They keep getting declined." "How do you know all this?" "She texts me constantly. Begging, threatening, pleading. I don't respond, but I do read them. It's better than Netflix." Outside Marcello's, Richard walked me to my car. "Thank you for this, Kennedy. For playing along with my little revenge dinner. Thank you for making it possible. One more thing," he said, pulling out an envelope. "Blake's final paycheck was mailed to your house since that's still his address on file. 2 weeks severance. I'd cash it quickly." I drove home to find my mother hosting her monthly garden party. 20 women in my backyard, wine flowing, voices carrying. I tried to sneak inside, but my mother spotted me. "Kennedy. Everyone, Kennedy's here. Fresh from her dinner at Marcello's." The women swarmed, all talking at once. Mrs. Patterson loudest of all. "We should start a support group. Wives who won. We'll meet monthly, drink wine, and celebrate leaving terrible husbands." My mother was serving potato salad, using Clara's recipe that she'd brought to last year's company picnic, but somehow better. "I added pickles," Mom said proudly. Clara's version was bland. Like her personality. Patricia's flowers were on my kitchen counter. 24 roses with a card. "You were always too good for my son. Love always, Mom." As the party continued outside, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the letter Victoria had messengered over. Blake's financial summary. The house, mine. His 401k, decimated by penalties. The car he drove, repossessed since it was leased under my credit. Country club membership, cancelled. The final line made me pause. Recommend employment urgently. Spousal support calculations begin next month. Blake would owe me support. The unemployed, couchsurfing former executive would have to pay his librarian ex-wife monthly support. I poured myself wine and rejoined the party. The women were still talking, sharing their own stories of survival and revenge. Mrs. Patterson was describing her first husband's affair with his secretary. So cliché it was almost boring. "How's Blake handling everything?" someone asked. "He's living his dream," I said. "Shacking up with his boss in her one-bedroom apartment." "Well, former boss. She got fired too." The group erupted in laughter and fresh rounds of toasting. To karma, to justice, to freedom, to better choices. As the sun set and the party wound down, I stood in my backyard no longer ours, and felt the full weight of victory. The last guest left around 10, taking with them the empty wine bottles and stories of survival. I stood alone in my backyard, the string lights Mom had hung casting soft shadows across the grass. The night was mine now. Quiet, peaceful, and completely free of waiting for someone who would never prioritize coming home. 6 months passed like pages in a book I was finally enjoying reading. The library board called me into a meeting on a Tuesday. Another Tuesday, but this one brought promotion, not betrayal. Regional manager for 3 branches, 20% salary increase, and an office with windows that actually opened. "You've shown remarkable leadership during a difficult period," the board president said. "We need someone with your strength." I almost laughed. My strength had been born from Blake's weakness. Marcus still came by the library on Fridays bringing coffee from the good place downtown. We'd become real friends. The kind without agendas or $200 breakfast performances. "You look different," he said one Friday, setting a latte on my new desk. Lighter. Amazing what happens when you drop 200 pounds of dead weight named Blake. He laughed. Speaking of, did you hear? He's working at Morrison & Associates now. Junior position. My buddy works there, says Blake, brings his lunch in Tupperware and takes the bus. The man who once insisted on valet parking was taking public transportation. There was poetry in that. My book club had transformed too. What started as wine and gossip evolved into something unexpected. A small wine distribution business. Martha had connections with local vineyards, Janet handled the legal structure, and I managed the books. Wives Who Won Wines was born from a joke at my mother's garden party but had already turned its first profit. We should send Blake a bottle, Janet suggested during our meeting. The cheap stuff. No, I said. He doesn't get space in our success story. Mom had finally stopped asking about grandchildren. Last week over lunch she'd simply said, "You've been through enough, honey. Whatever makes you happy is enough for me." It was Thursday when Blake reappeared. Not a special Thursday, just a rainy one in November. I was reading on my couch when the doorbell rang at 8 p.m. Through the peephole I saw him, soaked, shabby, holding grocery store flowers already wilting from the rain. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Kennedy." His voice cracked on my name. "Can we talk?" "We're talking." Inside. "I'm soaking." "That sounds like poor planning on your part." He stood there, rain running down his face, looking nothing like the man who'd walked in whistling that midnight. This version was deflated, desperate, and somehow smaller. "Clara left me," he said. "For a pharmaceutical executive. Apparently I was just revenge against Richard." I said nothing, just watched the rain fall behind him. "I'm working at Morrison now. Junior consultant. I make half what I used to. I take the bus, Kennedy. The bus. And I realize what I lost. What I threw away. You are. Stop." I held up my hand. "Your realization came 17 months too late. I'm not interested in your hindsight clarity. Please, Kennedy. I know I destroyed everything, but maybe..." "There's no maybe, Blake. You didn't just cheat. You came home proud of it. You looked me in the eye and bragged about destroying our marriage." The rain picked up, soaking through his thin jacket. The grocery store flowers drooped further. "I'll do anything," he said. "Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want is for you to leave." He stood there another moment, rain and regret making him look almost sympathetic. "Almost. Can I at least come in to dry off?" "No." I closed the door on his face, went to the kitchen and made myself tea. Through the window, I watched him stand on my porch for another 5 minutes before finally walking away, shoulders hunched against the rain. My phone buzzed. "Richard, tennis tomorrow? 9 a.m. Richard and I had become unlikely friends. Every Saturday we played tennis at the club Blake could no longer afford. We were equally matched. Both beginners, both laughing at our terrible serves, both healing from the same kind of betrayal. "Blake showed up tonight," I texted back. "In the rain. With gas station flowers. Clara called me yesterday. They're living in a studio apartment now, fighting constantly. She blames him for ruining her career. He blames her for ruining his marriage. They deserve each other." "No," Richard replied. "They deserve worse. But each other will have to do." Saturday morning tennis became my new ritual. Richard and I would play badly, laugh loudly, and occasionally run into people from Blake's former company who'd whisper about us being revenge partners. "You know what's funny?" Richard said after a particularly bad serve. "They think we're together. Blake and Clara are convinced we're having an affair." "Let them think it," I said, hitting the ball into the net. "Their paranoia is their problem. The best revenge really is living well," he said. "But living well while they watch from their studio apartment is even better." We both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from surviving something terrible and finding joy on the other side. That evening I made myself the perfect breakfast for dinner. 3 eggs scrambled with sharp cheddar, whole wheat toast with real butter, Colombian coffee with 2 sugars. The same meal I'd made Blake thousands of times, but now it was mine. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Blake had confessed his affair, where I'd planned his destruction, where I'd rebuilt my life. My phone sat silent beside me. No missed calls, no desperate texts, no one I needed to worry about. Everyone who mattered knew where to find me. Victoria called when she needed her sister. Mom dropped by unannounced with cookies. Marcus brought coffee. Richard brought tennis balls and terrible jokes. I raised my coffee mug to the empty chair across from me, not in sadness but in celebration. That chair had been Blake's, but now it was just furniture. Available for someone worthy or perfectly fine staying empty. The morning sun caught my wedding ring. Wait, no. I'd sold that months ago, donated the money to the library's literacy program. My hand was bare now, unmarked, free. I thought about the woman I'd been, waiting for 17 calls to be returned, accepting excuses disguised as explanations, making breakfast for someone who'd rather feast elsewhere. That woman had died at 11:58 p.m. on a Tuesday. This woman, the one drinking coffee alone on a Saturday night and loving it, she was born from betrayal but built from strength. She ran a library system, owned a wine business, played terrible tennis and never waited for anyone to come home. My phone buzzed once. Mom, dinner tomorrow? I'm making lasagna. Your recipe? I texted back. No. Mine's better. I smiled, finished my coffee and cleaned my single plate. Outside the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, like possibility, like freedom, like a life that was finally, completely mine. The best revenge hadn't been destroying Blake. That had been temporary satisfaction. The best revenge was becoming someone who'd never accept 17 ignored calls again. Someone who knew her worth before the coffee got cold. I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed. My bed in my house, in my perfectly imperfect life. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight I was exactly where I needed to be. Home. If this story of calculated revenge kept you hooked until the very end, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Kennedy served Blake his usual breakfast to Marcus instead, watching his face turn 17 shades of red. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.